Okay, hello everyone. Welcome to another live coaching call with Nino Marketing. We take a little break from our step two, describing and identifying and working with a parent avatar, to welcome back our founder, Matt Hillis. How are you, Matt?
I'm well. Thanks for
Good.
having me today.
Yeah, absolutely. We're always happy to have you. So we've got kind of a daunting task for you to take on today, which is to take your Montessori crystal ball and let us know what you think and what you see coming up in 2020. What are the trends? What are the things that we are doing well? What can we do better? All of that wrapped into one. So I'm just going to let you kind of take it away and give us your thoughts.
Okay. Well, I will start off by saying that, everything is just my opinion, first of all, so it could be completely wrong. And also, some of these things are local, so issues that may affect us in California may not affect people in New York or Illinois or Texas or wherever you are running your school. So I think that it does vary by state, it does vary by region. So the good things, the economy is still great. And when the economy is great, it makes our job as a Montessorian easier in terms of just demand. So unemployment in my area right now is about 3%. So that means that there's a lot of people working. That creates some dynamics for us where we have a lot of interest in our school. And so our waiting list is growing and growing. But at the same time, it's actually hard to recruit and retain good people. So that's been a challenge for us as well. So it's a double-edged sword. So moving into go ahead.
Sorry, do you mean like good people as in like staff members or families that fit your school, or both?
No. So for the families that fit our school, because we have, a lot of people inquiring about the program, we can filter out who's going to be the best fit for our school. Mm-hmm. So that's actually a benefit. It does create more work for us in terms of that filtering process. However, that's a good problem, right? I'll take that problem all day. The challenge is more, especially as our school has grown, really recruiting high quality teacher assistants. That's an ongoing thing. In fact, I have one person that's just responsible for staffing, hiring at all of the locations we have, because it can be a little bit overwhelming. Not only just to find people that are qualified, but also find people that are looking for this because we're a Montessori program and not because they just need a job. So that's been an issue with the economy. But looking forward into 2020, I hope that the economy continues to expand. You turn on the news and everybody talks about kind of an impending recession, and who knows what's going to happen with the election and everything. So I think that there's some uncertainty going into the next year. And what I would encourage people to do is, this is the time to actually invest in your school and your systems and your programs to make it easier when the economy does not continue to expand at the rate at which it's expanding. So when you have a little bit of extra money, when you have a little bit of extra fluidity in your budget, this is the time to make those improvements in your facility, in your materials, in your systems that you're using to recruit and retain families, because it will not always be, we won't always be in this situation.
Mm-hmm. So, yeah, and we learned a lot in 2008 as well, 2009. So not only do we not know how long this is going to flourish, right? The economy is doing well, when that's really going to change, but that we have experienced it recently in our time. To kind of learn the lessons and pay attention to those as we move forward.
Yeah, it was so interesting. In 2008 and 2009, our elementary enrollment actually increased. In our early childhood, that's where I noticed a little bit of a softening. It wasn't terribly dramatic. Sacramento was hit extremely hard by the recession. Mm-hmm. It's kind of ground zero for, all those home defaults and everything in California. So it was pretty severe here, and I noticed it mostly in early childhood and not necessarily in elementary. And I think that was because people were, public schools were starting to be underfunded. There weren't as many other options, and so for people that had stable incomes, they were looking for a stable environment for their child. So that was a kind of a weird experience, I guess. It wasn't something that I would have anticipated.
Matt, do you have any advice? Because obviously the atmosphere, the economy, the demographics will change throughout time. Do you have any tips or advice of what schools can do to really build the foundation or the structure to weather the storms that are going to come inevitably?
That is a great question. Um, I mentioned previously, if you have the budget fluidity, this is the time to, even if you're full, this is the time to make those improvements in anticipation of a downturn. I think that, what else can you do? I want to look at this in two ways. One would be kind of economy wise, and then another one would be kind of demographic shifts. So economy wise, I think that especially if you run an elementary program, you have to be able to make concessions for people and have a financial aid program that you can use. We just use our financial aid program exclusively for elementary students.
Mm.
Because a Montessori child can't be replaced, and so I'm much more willing to allocate portions of the budget for keeping a child through the elementary program. They've already made a commitment to us. They've already been invested in the program. We can't admit a child that's 8 that's never been in a Montessori program. I mean, we've done that, and if it's the right fit in a very unique circumstance, we will, but it's not best practice for sure. So you have to be, this is the time to be able to look at what your budgets are, and is it, if you're looking at the seats that you need filled in your elementary program to keep it viable, what would you be willing to, what types of financial aid would you be willing to give a family that is committed through the long run? Because that does also provide some tertiary benefits for your elementary community, right? One of the reasons why people may leave a Montessori elementary program is if there aren't enough social contacts or social groupings for their child. And so, there is a benefit to having more children in that program to be able to have a variety of social interactions. And then secondly, just having somebody start and finish all the way through is really a testament to your program. You do get great case documentation. You do get great stories that you can tell. You do develop goodwill by having, a child start at 18 months or 3 years of age and then, stay with you for 9 years. So you need to ask yourself, what are you willing to do? What concessions are you willing to make in order to make that happen with the family?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and it's interesting you bring this up. I just had a really good conversation with a president of a board of an area school, and they were having the same discussion because they're seeing elementary families leave, and they're trying to identify what that's about. And it really, it's interesting that you bring that up because I think changing or having more opportunities for tuition to look different at elementary, whether it's decreasing or providing only financial aid. I mean, I think that's such a genius solution because it feeds into honoring your families that have been with you for so long,
Yeah.
and giving them kind of a carrot of saying like, hey, this is actually, while our program is still valuable, because on the other side of it, people argue, well, aren't you decreasing the value of your program? But it's really shifting the value from your program to your parents, which also then feeds into the program, right?
Sure, absolutely. And it also does need to be needs-based, right? So you need to have some way of testing those needs or testing the means that they have in order to pay for tuition. And this is where it is really a good idea to have some external program that does that. I know ISM offers a great free tool for vetting financial aid where they're going to be looking at tax returns and kind of verifying those things. So it's not, I've had those situations before. I remember when I first started a long time ago, we didn't have a formal financial aid program in place, and we did make a concession for a parent. And then, about 6 or 9 months later, they roll up in a new BMW. And so it was like one of those things where it was like, well, what exactly is going on here? So I would just highly recommend that you have a formalized process in place for that. And there are many solutions out there in the marketplace that can provide that third-party vetting of meansability, basically, for paying tuition, and that it's done every year. So it's not kind of a set and forget thing that you're really looking at it for each year, because people's circumstances change. And you're right, it would be unfair if you have one family paying X amount of dollars and another family paying half of that, and you're just, and that goes on for 5 or 6 years, and you're taking that based upon old data.
Mm-hmm. Right. Absolutely. And when you think about community, right? So obviously having an elementary community that's robust is very important, especially for the second plane. But let's say, you know, you're losing families at that, or you're having a hard time building that program. Could you then go out into the community and find resources that actually argue against a parent's rejections to, you know, your community not being social enough? So for example, can you partner with a community center? Can you partner with another Montessori school, which I've seen this happen locally, just to get a bigger community, so that you can really talk to that point? Because that's an important one, you know, and we know that as Montessorians, it's important for kids to have that too.
It is, and especially as children get older, you know, in when you get into upper elementary, they're going to want and desire. It's a natural thing for them to want, you know, more social interactions. It's one of the biggest challenges with running a Montessori adolescent program is that, you know, unless you have a decent sized quorum of children, you're not going to appeal to their intrinsic need for greater social connections. And if the school down the street has 500 children and they're 12 or 13 years old, at that point, they're really going to want to kind of explore that side of themselves, which is totally understandable and natural. Mm-hmm. So whatever you can do to keep your elementary program higher numbers through the variety of means we discussed is a good idea. I've never had to do, you know, we don't have other Montessori elementary schools in our area, so I've never actually had that experience of doing it. I think if the schools were close enough together and you were doing, whether that's, you know, community events, sporting events, social events, I mean, those could all be really, really beneficial. That would give people and parents and children that diversity that they need in terms of their community.
Mm-hmm. And even projects, you know, going out together and, you know, yeah, that would be really big.
Yeah. And I think this all comes down to whether or not you have if you're in an area where there's a Montessori training center, you're probably going to find more schools that have elementary programs that you could do that. Unfortunately, our area is not one of those areas.
Right. So those of you that are here live, if you've got any questions for Matt, feel free to chat them in. I'll keep an eye on the chat. But I know you had some other thoughts about 2020, Matt.
Sure. So, you know, we talked about the generational aspects of things, and, you know, millennials are now our parents. You know, if you're looking at, especially if you're enrolling in early childhood, millennials are our parents. They're not, and millennials are different. And listen, actually, it's not even just millennials. The culture of our country has changed so much, and expectations of parents has changed so much just in the past 5 years with the advent of social media and this kind of always on connection that we have with everybody. And I'm still thinking a lot about that in terms of our approach to how we guide parents through this experience, because so many parents want to be a part of their child's experience. And how do we do that in a way that honors the fact that this is not, you know, the parent is our customer, but the child is actually the one going through the program. And so, you know, this year we invested in Transparent Classroom, which I would highly recommend as a parent communication tool and record keeping software. That's been great for us so far. And one of the things that I like about it is that it makes it easy for parents to get basic information about how their child is doing. Unlike in other conventional preschools where they're going to get a monthly lesson plan and, you know, everybody learned about, you know, the solar system this week, we obviously don't do that. But one of the key pieces of feedback that I get from parents a lot is, oh, I just don't know what my child's doing. How am I supposed to trust this if I'm not getting information? And so one of the things I really liked about Transparent Classroom is that, you know, when you're tagging photos and uploading it to the child's account, the parent gets an automatic email with that photo and then with the description of the material that they're working on. And I found that that's a really, really easy way for teachers to stay in touch with parents. I almost call it like this passive system, right? Where all we're doing is basically taking a photo of a child and tagging their name and tagging the material that they're working on. Parent gets an automatic email with the picture, which they love, of course. And then there's an explanation of that specific material and why it's important and kind of how it fits into the continuum of Montessori philosophy. So I really, really like that. And we made that switch in the second half of this year. We're looking forward to doing that. So that would be one example of ways in which we're kind of trying to adjust to the new needs of parents. I don't have an answer for this, actually. a lot of this is just kind of trying things and seeing what sticks. But what it really comes down to is trying to learn exactly what parents are wanting out of this experience. And that's, I think, where I am right now. So we sent out our school survey last week, and we're starting to get a lot of good information. I'm going to be doing a lot more opportunities for feedback that parents can give us. And I think that's one of the things that's been missing at our school, and probably many schools, is that there's no, the communication tends to go one way, which is top down. And actually the people that need to know the most about what parents are thinking are usually, their administrators, their program leaders, because they're the ones making the long-term strategic decisions. But I found that I was a little bit disconnected from what exactly parents are experiencing, because they may be communicating that to teachers, but teachers, our teachers have 30 other children in the classroom. That information may not get to me. I don't have the data that I need to make a good decision. So,
and also what I've found, Matt, is like when parents want to engage, they don't necessarily know how to. And so if there's not a structure in place to figure that out, then either the conversations never happen, or they happen in places that are not, you can't collect the data. The information is not coming, or it's translated differently through someone else, because we all know the telephone game, and that's never effective.
Totally.
Right. But what I love about what you're saying about transparent classroom and how you can send like basically sound bites to families is it gives them a framework for conversation.
Right.
It gives them just enough to go, and they start to lean in, and they'll ask the questions, because oftentimes parents don't know what questions to ask. It is so foreign to them that the only experience they have is what their child is experiencing, what their child is bringing home. And most of the time their child is not bringing home much, if anything. So there's anxiety there for parents.
Absolutely. And, all those little doubts, because there is no formalized way of communicating their needs, or even internally recognizing what their needs are. I think all those doubts add up over time in their head, and they create this ledger, right? And so then they eventually unload on you when you do have to have a meeting about a child's progress, or when they do have to write a letter that they're going to be leaving your school. It's like, if we could have just preempted that and started having conversations earlier, we probably could have had a different outcome. So that's what I like about Transparent Classroom, is that it does facilitate that. And the reason why we chose that is because it had the easiest way. The objection that I would get from guides was, I just don't have time to email parents every day or every week or whatever. Like, I can't take a picture, upload it to my computer, get it to my email, send it to them, write a paragraph. I mean, that feels overwhelming. This was literally, you're getting it done in, 5 minutes a day, because if you have, we bought classroom iPads for the classroom to be able to do these things. Where, we have an assistant who may be, just taking photos, and we did a separate training on how to take photos without being disruptive, because we didn't want to have devices just, putting cameras and devices in children's faces all day long. But how we're going to do that in a way that is not going to disrupt concentration and the work session, but also that documents the child's experience in the classroom. And then once those pictures are uploaded to the iPad, then the teacher just has to go in and just tag it. And the tagging, again, is just that is the work that has to be done. And then parents get everything else automatically.
Can you modify what the description says of the material? And I ask this because I wonder if you can like add a little bit more, like connect, especially in elementary. Like, let's say there's, racks and tubes that's being presented, and you're seeing that, and you can have a little paragraph about math and what that looks like in cosmic education, which again, it picks apart the parts, it gives the parent a part, but a connection to the whole. Which of course is the end goal of where we want our parents to be, right? We want them to understand Montessori at a deep level, but that takes time.
Yeah, and I hate to break this to you, but more than half of your parents are never going to understand Montessori on a deep level. It is, there is no time for them, or brain space or attention or whatever, for them to be able to do that. They want, so what they're looking for is these higher points. Their child is growing, their child is challenged, their child is happy, they have a good relationship with they trust you, they trust the child's teacher. So those are the things that I would prefer to use as benchmarks versus, I do think it's a fantasy to think that all of your parents are going to have this deep reverence and an inclination to come to a meeting for 2 hours after they've worked and really hear about Dr. Montessori's philosophy. I mean, some people are going to be really interested in that because of who they are, but I think most aren't. Most want to see through the filter of their child. And again, that's an ongoing challenge. Like we stopped doing parent education nights and we do all of our parent education in the mornings through coffees now. We do have a couple, evening sessions that are kind of more whole school things for topics, but we're not doing, a Montessori mathematics night in the evening because it was just like pulling teeth trying to get people to come to this.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, because you also get a lot of people at different stages of their understanding. And how do you encompass all of that in an hour and a half?
Absolutely.
So, cool. All right. What are some more thoughts? And again, if you're here, ask some questions. Matt would love to. Oh, we got one already. David mentioned. Can you say more about the structure of your coffee and parent ed?
Sure. So we have our morning coffees and they're separated by level and they're held once a month. And so we would have our infant classrooms, our toddler community environments, our primary environments, and our elementary environments. So one of the things that we've decided this year at our school that we haven't implemented yet, but it's kind of in progress, is we wanted to have a monthly theme for our coffees. So we wanted to pick our monthly themes in advance. And, we don't do a coffee chat in December because it's a busy time and we're out for half the month. So I think our goal was to do it 6 to 8 times per year, but that we pick a monthly theme. So a theme could be independence. A theme could be concentration. A theme could be care for the self. And the point about that is that all the coffee chats for all the programs are going to have that theme, but the content is going to be different at each level based upon the age and the development of the child. So talking about independence for a 6-month-old is going to be much different than talking about independence for an 11-year-old. But what we were trying to do is to create kind of an umbrella for more of like a structure for these parent ed classes, so everybody knew that we were talking about the same thing. And the benefit is that they can start to see, there's a couple benefits. They can start to see how, if they have children in different classrooms, they can see the continuum of Montessori education, like how this changes at each level and how there's this spiraling curriculum that continues, and we're building upon the lessons learned in the previous classrooms. And number two, I think it makes us look more organized and structured. And one of the criticisms we give Montessori is that it's just kind of this free for all, and there is no structure or kind of natural progression that most children go through. And I think that this helps to at least alleviate a little bit of those concerns. It makes the school look more organized. And then what we can do is, in the leading up to the parent coffees, what we can do is send out articles. So if we're going to be talking about independence in the month of January, in December, we're going to be sending out reminders about that coffee, but also articles about independence. So we're starting to prime that pump so that then when they come in, they've at least had a couple shots at articles that we recommend. And, some people will read them, some people won't. But the point is that you're kind of dripping information to build that interest so that when you have the event, you actually have a little bit of a build up to it. Another important aspect of these events is this is not a lecture, right? So there's information that's given. The presentation itself would be probably 20 minutes, but what we really want is an interaction between families. We want questions asked about what's going on in terms of independence with their child. And what happens is the community starts to come together and get a little bit more cohesive because people who have the same age of children are together and they can talk about what's been successful for them and what's worked for them and not. And I think that really builds a sense of community. And this is also a social event. I mean, let's be honest, we want parents to know each other and we want parents to feel like this is a place where they can come and make friends and get to know the parents of children that their child is friends with. So it has that other benefit as well. But we just got to the point with parent education in the evenings that, we had to guilt people into coming. And that was not a good feeling to do. And maybe in the 80s and early 90s, that was a possibility because people weren't so overscheduled. But it is impossible, I think, in 2019 to really get buy-in for people to come to a meeting, to find a babysitter, to delay bedtime, to eat dinner late, just so they can come and hear a teacher talk about something that's important for them.
Coffee, people are really happy when they drink coffee.
Yeah, and a great thing about the coffee chat is that like we'll do it at 8:30 in the morning, so you'll be at work an hour later that day, but that's a much more reasonable thing to request than to completely get in the way of their evening schedule, which is quite honestly the only time that a lot of these parents have to themselves. And so that's another cost that you're taking from them.
Mm-hmm. Or with their children.
Correct.
Okay, so David asks, have you ever tried a lunch discussion, or has coffee been your best bet?
Coffee's been our best bet. Lunch would be interesting. Our school, we serve people from such a wide area that it may be hard for people to get all the way back to school to do that at lunch. But that's not something we've tried. And, maybe that would be something that would be interesting. I think that, now that I'm kind of mulling it around with my head, that would be a really interesting thing to do actually with children present, whether, I have had guides before invite parents to come eat lunch with the group of children for something. We haven't done anything official at noontime, but depending on your community and kind of what the demographic makeup is, that may work. But it really depends on your school. Mm-hmm. I think really the answer to this is that you have to like try a bunch of things to see what works best for your community. And here's another thing is like polling your parents is a great thing. We did a poll for our parents a couple of years ago where, we were starting we have evening social events, not parent educations, like, ice cream social, or we have like a holiday event. And, for 40 years, we started them at 7 p.m. And I had some people say, well, why are we starting them so late? By the time it's 7 o'clock, we're getting home by 9:30, et cetera, et cetera. So we put out a poll to parents, and by far the time preferred was 6:30 p.m. So now we just start everything at 6:30 p.m. So you may want to poll your parents about whether or not the lunchtime thing would be of benefit to them.
Matt, what is your take on polling parents? What's the most effective way to get feedback? Because I have heard many people say like, well, we sent stuff out, we didn't hear anything. So from a marketing standpoint, I'm sure there's probably a process, right, that you can go through to actually get your parents to give you that feedback. But what do you guys do, and what is the most engagement you get out of your strategy?
So we just did our parent survey last week. It's still open. I think we'll probably wind up getting about 33, maybe about a third of people. It's about 40%.
And you send it out via email.
What's that? We send it out via email, but I do have some ideas about actually some different things to do. So when you're sending it out by email, the most important thing to recognize is that if you send it out once, it doesn't exist. You have to send it out 3 to 5 times at the very minimum. And I know it sounds like annoying, and I'm going to be annoying people, et cetera, but so we put this one out once on its own. We put it in the weekly update that goes out every Tuesday. We'll put it out once on its own again, and then we'll put out a final one where it's literally the subject line is final call for parent feedback. It's important too that you're writing persuasive copy in the email about why they should do this, right? And so I'm not going to get into copywriting or persuasion today, but if you just send out an email that says fill out our parent survey, not a lot of people may respond to it. So looking at how you're writing the body of the email is important, and you can actually see more people engaging because of that. And then secondly, the subject line is important too. So like I started the subject line for these emails. I think the subject line is parentheses, action requested, close parentheses, and then please, give us your feedback. So, when I get an email that says action requested, I usually take a second glance at it because it's usually from a bank or something. So, we do want them to take this step, and subject line and copy for those types of emails can help. I believe do we have something on Nido about copywriting yet? Deneen, do you know, in one of our courses?
I've got a blog, for sure. Let me pull it up. But if not, if it isn't there, I'll make sure to ping comment that we do that, because I think that's so you're talking specifically about like persuasive writing and what that looks like in your messaging and your communicating.
I'm talking about persuasive writing for the internet. So that there's a way to write copy in emails. Like I'm not going to have any paragraphs that are more than 3 sentences. I'm going to backlink everything so you don't see long, ugly links, and so you can actually click on things. I'm going to use buttons in my email to make it very, very clear the action that I want them to take. And again, we're dealing with people that everybody's competing for their eyeballs and attention, and we're just another one of those people, like competing for attention. So it's like, what do you have to do to get their attention? Subject lines, have been successful for me depending on the type of email program they're using. Inserting the name of their child in the subject line helps quite a lot, right? So please fill out your parent survey for, Stephen in so-and-so's classroom. Like that personalization helps. It's relatively easy to do. I know MailChimp can do it if you set it up correctly. So that helps your engagement. Also, a key aspect to the survey, our survey is 3 questions. Like I always cringe when I get these surveys that it's like, yeah, this will take you 25 minutes to fill out. I'm like, nope, click, that's not happening. So our survey was 3 questions. It was, what did we do well? What could we improve at our school? And then on a scale of 1 to 10, 0 being the least and 10 being the most, would you recommend our school to another friend or family? And we find that, if you're just structuring it with 3 questions, you will have much more responses because, it could take them, 3 minutes to fill out, and they don't have this thing where they're scrolling through pages of different types of questions. I think those really granular questions are best done in person. You can actually have a conversation with somebody. And I understand why large corporations do them because they're dealing with millions of people and they're not going to be able to have those one-on-one conversations. We absolutely can do that. So I would recommend that you do have conversations with your parents too. But doing a survey for a school that's more than 3 questions, I think is kind of a fool's errand.
Mm-hmm. Sure. And you know what it does is it gives the impression to your parents that you always want to improve, right? And their satisfaction is incredibly important to how you're going to do that.
Absolutely.
So and you can get that across in 3 questions. Those are brilliant questions to ask because it will give them that impression. You may not get all the information that you want, and I absolutely agree with you. Let's do that in face-to-face. But just allowing your parents to see that you're really invested in improving not just classroom quality and making sure your guides have everything they need, but like community and making sure that your parents feel connected and that they actually, are supported as well.
Yeah, absolutely. Another one thing I'd like to look into for this upcoming year for 2020 would be, I know that there are programs that will allow you to send out surveys via text. That may be more efficacious for getting responses, right? I know that for me, now you would have to set expectations with parents in advance when they're enrolling or when they're filling out their emergency information that, you may text them from time to time. But that could be a better way to get feedback. I'm looking into programs that can do that.
You share with us when you find it?
I will absolutely share with you. And then another thing that I would say is that, this is a general parent survey that we sent out. I think that, and by the way, the information that you get back, that's all gold. I don't actually want, it's great for the ego to get, 10s back. And most of the stuff we got back was 10s, but we got back 1, 2. And that was a really interesting thing to get because I would have no idea about, I want to understand why, where did we go wrong in this process? And yeah, I think we were able to speak to the parent and start to have a conversation. That's another benefit of this, is that you're identifying a problem early enough where you can start to address it, and it doesn't go on for a year and then all of a sudden they're yelling at you in the office because you didn't do X, Y, and Z. So I think that information you get, that's the gold, right? And so however you can get people to respond to these things is really, really beneficial because it gives you exactly what your parents are thinking and needing, exactly what your community wants. I absolutely want to, in addition to a parent survey, I'd like to send out surveys actually on a regular basis about most things. So after parent-teacher conferences, again, 3 questions. How did it go? I want to know if, how things are working for them. After re-enrollment, at the end of the school year, all those types of things where you can, after your parent coffees, how's the parent coffee? Let me know. What topics are you interested in learning about? I want to be customer focused in terms of what their needs are within a paradigm of Montessori philosophy. I want to see what they want to know and how we can help them through this journey instead of just assuming it. And that's what a lot of us do, is that we assume exactly what their needs are instead of asking.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. When you're gathering that information, is it always that who is responding, or is it ever anonymous?
So we had an option for anonymous, or you could leave your name and email address if you wanted to, or if there was an issue, if there was an issue that you have, please put your email and name down here so we can contact you to help you solve it. I would say that probably 90% of them are anonymous, which is fine. I think that having that anonymous aspect of it makes it feel safer for people to be honest with you about what their needs are. For whatever reason that is, we're not going to get into the psychology of why people don't like confrontation. Sometimes I've heard, it always shocks me, I would get a withdrawal letter from a parent and they're like, please don't let this affect how you're going to interact with so-and-so. Don't take it out on my child over the next month during this period. And I'm just okay, if that's really what you think we would do, this is a whole separate conversation. Um, but you know, for whatever reason, parents are going to, I feel, more comfortable with anonymous feedback than giving their actual name, which is 100% fine with me, because it actually doesn't matter who is, unless somebody has a specific like solvable issue. It doesn't really matter who's giving it to me. I want to know, because you can start to see, like, you'll get all this feedback and you get, you know, 15 pieces of feedback on one thing and then one is negative. Well, you know, I'm not really going to change the whole way we're operating because of one person. But if we had 7 of those people say they really didn't like it, I would absolutely take a look at, you know, how you're structuring that decision.
Sure. Yeah. And David said he loves this. Acton does a similar 3-question survey every week. We share their results transparently with the community every week, and the data stream has been super helpful.
Totally, David. I'd actually love to get more information about how that's working for you, because I was thinking about, even in our weekly update, just having a feedback button where it's like they push it and they can give us positive or negative feedback. Because I love the positive feedback too. If there's somebody in our school that's just doing an amazing job, I want to hear that as well. And then being able to circulate that data amongst your staff and be able to say, so this is what's going on with our parents, and then it makes it a community issue rather than your issue. And it's easier to solve and it's easier to impact change when you are involving other people in the problem, right? And it's just data, right? It's not your opinion, it's just data.
Absolutely. David says, yes, we do via Google Forms, and it just syncs in Google Sheets. It's very simple, and he'll send you an example. Well, he'll send me an example to send you.
David, look forward to that. Thank you.
Cool. Yeah, that's a neat ninja trick right there. I love that. And I mean, you can even get really creative with it, of like, you know, the satisfaction of our parents, like have a scale and kind of like show where you're at. That's cool.
Yeah. I have this kind of general internal idea that I haven't really put into action yet, but I'm just calling it red light, green light. And I want an email to go out to just all of our staff on a weekly basis, just with any of the feedback we've gotten. And it's red light, green light. Green light is like, this is the praise we've received. And red light would be, this is an issue that's come up. And by the way, like, staff and employees can absolutely do red light and green lights too. Like, if another staff is really thankful for, you know, somebody's hard work when they were covering for somebody, like, I want to be able to honor that and circulate that information. And also, if a staff member is having an issue with, you know, our time clock or is confused about our benefits, like, I want to know about that too. And I think that I'm not afraid of making that information public. And I think the more we make that information community-based rather than kind of holding it, I think people trust us more. And I think that we are, again, it's much easier to impact change when people are aware that it's not, you know, when they see behind the curtain. I think they're much more apt to be receptive to change.
Yeah, absolutely. That's good stuff. So I know we went over time, but do you have any other thoughts about 2020? I know, right?
I just flew by. I'm working on a system right now to systematize our review process. So online reviews are obviously a big deal. And I know I've talked to so many Montessori schools, because it bruises your ego when you come across something on Yelp. I had a review on Yelp, not sure how long ago it was, but it was actually this person didn't even attend our school. They came to a school tour. And on our school tours, we asked that children don't attend. Well, this person brought 3 children who were running around screaming in our reception area, and the admissions director decided, you know, we're probably not going to go into the classroom because it's going to be disruptive. Well, we got a 1-star review on Yelp for our school, and guess what? Like, that brings your Yelp score down. So I think the solution to this is to have a system in place that gives you enough consistent generation of positive reviews, so that when you get an inevitable negative review, which every business, organization, school will get at some point, because it's impossible not to in these days, that you have enough positive ammunition to kind of to negate any of the 1-star reviews that come through. So that's just about having a process, right? That's about making sure that when people are graduating from your school, that you have an automatic email that goes out to them from the teacher, not from the administrator, saying, would you please take 5 minutes and submit a Google review or a Yelp review or whatever, because I think that could really help.
Yeah, let us know what you come up with that in that process.
I will.
Because that's always a challenge, right? Like you want to address it, but you have to do it with a grain of salt. And what does that look like? So
I will. The last thing that I'll say in closing is in 2020, do not be afraid to raise your tuition rates for the upcoming school year. I know schools struggle with this. And one of the biggest mistakes that I think you can make is when you devalue, I'm not going to say devalue, that's probably not the right word to choose. When you are afraid to charge what it takes to run a high quality program. I know each community is different, and I know this is a really hard decision, especially when you may get some immediate feedback from parents about your tuition increases. But you're going to dig yourself a hole in terms of being able to provide a high quality Montessori program if you can't charge what it costs to do that. And there are ways around that. Like I said, financial aid programs can help for those that need it, and then it's needs based. I think that that's fair. But for the most part, if you want to have a high quality Montessori program, it's not going to be an inexpensive thing to do. And at least for us in California, it's getting very expensive just labor wise. I mean, our minimum wage rate is going to be $15 an hour very soon. That means we need to start people at $18 an hour. I mean, so it's like this all comes out in the wash eventually. So don't be afraid to get out ahead of these things and raise your tuition. I know that it's hard initially, but it is the best thing you can do.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Good feedback for sure. All right, Matt. Well, as always, it's so good to have you on these calls and hear what you're up to. And hopefully, I don't think we've got you booked until probably 2020. So hopefully, all the things that we talked about and then some will come up. And will you be at the refresher course?
I will be at the refresher course. I'll be in Seattle in February 14th or 17th. So say hello if you see me.
Yeah. Any other places you'll be that our members can find you or see you?
I'm not sure if I'm going to the AMS conference yet. I think it's in Dallas. I'm not sure where it is this year. So that may be a thing. That may not be a thing. But no, I'm not currently. I traveled so much in 2019 that I'm actually looking forward to kind of being a little bit of a hermit and living my best life here.
Right. Cool. All right. Well, you enjoy that, Matt, and we will see you around, okay?
All right. Thanks. Bye-bye.
Bye.